A mother's trust. The extraordinary tale of a wolf and her cub. It was barely dawn when I swung the cabin door open, searching for that first breath of mountain air. Still half asleep, I stumbled onto the porch in my faded plaid shirt and worn leather boots. My mind focused solely on the promise of strong coffee to shake off the morning fog. That's when time stopped. There she stood, a full-grown wolf, not hidden in the distant treeline or captured on some trail camera, but right there on my damn porch, hardly 8 feet away. She didn't lunge, didn't bare her teeth, didn't make a sound. She just stood there, trembling, her breathing labored and uneven. Her silver-gray coat was dirty and matted with dark patches of moisture. But her eyes, Jesus, her eyes were what froze me in place. They leaked tears like nothing I'd ever witnessed in the animal kingdom. Actual tears streaming down her face, creating dark trails in her fur. That's when I noticed what hung from her jaws: a pup, completely limp, legs dangling like broken wind chimes, head lolled to one side, utterly still. Every instinct screamed at me to slam the door, to reach for the shotgun mounted by the kitchen doorway, but something deeper held me back. This wasn't a threat standing before me. This was pure maternal desperation, a primal emotion I couldn't fully comprehend but immediately recognized. My heart thundered against my ribs as I retreated slowly, one careful step back. She followed, matching my pace, one cautious paw after another. Then, with a gentleness that defied her wild nature, she laid the pup on the wooden planks of my porch floor, backed away several feet, and sat down, her golden eyes never breaking contact with mine. Against every wilderness survival lesson I'd ever learned, against the warnings of my grandfather who'd taught me to respect the boundary between man and wild, I crouched down. The pup looked beyond saving tiny, perhaps the size of a beagle, with prominent ribs and dried blood crusting one delicate ear. Then came a miracle: the slightest movement, a nearly imperceptible rise and fall of its small chest. I looked back at the mother wolf. She hadn't moved an inch, just watched me with an intensity that seemed to pierce straight through me. "I'll try," I said aloud, the words escaping before I could think. "I'll try to help." She remained motionless as I wrapped the pup in my flannel shirt, my pulse racing wildly as I slowly backed into the house. She never flinched, never showed aggression, just sat there in silent vigil, as if she understood something profound that I couldn't yet grasp. Inside, I gently placed the pup on my couch and scrambled for supplies: clean towels, a heating pad, bottled water, anything I could think of. The little creature was cold to the touch, barely clinging to life. I peeked through the window. She hadn't moved, maintaining her silent guard. Standing in my living room, cradling this dying wolf pup against my chest, I was struck by the absurdity and gravity of the situation. This wasn't just some random animal encounter, not just nature being unpredictable. This was something more significant, something that had chosen me, whether I was ready or not. The mother wolf remained on my porch all day long, watching, waiting. And that pup, that tough little soul, wasn't ready to surrender just yet. The pup lay on my sofa like a heap of soaked rags, lifeless, cold, barely present in this world. I knelt beside him, pressing 2 fingers against his fragile ribcage. Nothing at first. I held my breath and leaned in closer, close enough to smell his wild scent, damp fur tinged with the metallic hint of blood. Then I felt it, the slightest rise and fall. A breath so shallow it was nearly imperceptible, but undeniably there. "You're still with us?" I whispered, my voice catching. "God damn it, you're still fighting." I wrapped him tighter in my flannel shirt and hurried to my spare room where an old space heater sat gathering dust. I plugged it in, cranked it to maximum, then created a nest of blankets and towels, placing him carefully in the center like some rare, precious artifact. His breathing remained shallow, his chest barely moving. One hind leg was stiff and unnatural, and that ear, the blood had dried into a dark crust around it. This wasn't mere exhaustion, something had attacked this pup. From outside came the sound of light scratching. I glanced out the window. She remained there, sitting, watching, an ancient sentinel guarding her most valuable treasure. I grabbed my phone and called Dylan, the nearest veterinarian, though he primarily treated livestock and family pets. "Yeah?" he answered, voice thick with sleep. "Dylan, it's me, Jackson. I've got a wolf pup here. Injured. I mean really bad." Silence stretched across the line. "You been hitting the whiskey again?" "Damn it, I'm serious," I insisted. "The mother literally brought him to me, dropped him on my porch. She's still here, just sitting, waiting." A long pause followed. Then, "What in God's name did you just say?" "I don't have time to explain everything. Just tell me how to keep him alive." "Jesus, okay. Warm him up first. Check for bleeding. Don't try feeding him yet, just fluids like honey water, administered with a dropper. Keep him calm. I'll call Sophia. She used to work with wildlife rehabilitation." I hung up and rushed to the kitchen, finding an old bottle of raw honey. I mixed it with warm water and used a turkey baster, the closest thing I had to a dropper. Gently opening the pup's mouth, I let a few drops trickle in. Nothing happened at first, then a twitch, his tiny tongue moving slightly. "That's it," I encouraged. "Stay with me, little fighter." I sat beside him for what felt like hours, talking, humming, occasionally cursing under my breath. The wolf outside never moved once. I cracked the door slightly. She raised her head, met my eyes, then lowered her head again. She was trusting me with her child's life, a realization that still shakes me to my core. By noon, the pup moved one paw, just a slight, lazy stretch, as if testing whether gravity still applied to him. I laughed out loud, tears spilling down my cheeks before I even registered I was crying. "Not today," I told him firmly. "You're not dying today. Not on my watch." I was completely out of my depth, surrounded by bloodied towels and this broken little body. But one thing was crystal clear: this pup wasn't ready to surrender, and I wasn't about to let him fight alone. By mid-afternoon, my living room resembled a makeshift animal clinic run by a madman, blankets covering every surface, towels piled high, the space heater humming steadily. The pup lay directly in front of it, swaddled like a newborn with one tiny paw exposed, bleeding again. I examined it closely, a tear, possibly a bite mark, swollen and angry red. Infection could kill him faster than the cold ever could. I grabbed hydrogen peroxide, the kind I used for my own cuts, dabbed some onto a clean cloth, and gently touched it to the wound. He flinched, a good sign. Pain meant awareness. Awareness meant he was still fighting. From outside came a soft grunt. Looking through the window, I saw the mother hadn't moved an inch, still sitting in exactly the same position, her massive form as still as carved stone. But her eyes, they tracked every movement I made with laser focus. I opened the door just a crack. "He's still with us," I said quietly, "hanging by a thread, but he's here." She made no response, no growl, just continued her steady breathing. Back inside, I sat on the floor beside the pup and offered more honey water. His tongue flicked out, not much, but definitely something. My phone buzzed. Dylan again. "Sophia says you're completely insane," he reported. "But she's driving up with medications. She'll be there by nightfall." Thank God. Relief flooded through me. "He's bleeding from his leg, and I think he's running a fever. Keep him warm. No sudden movements. Don't try solid food yet. And Jackson, for the love of all that's holy, don't open that door wide. That mother won't stay patient forever." I knew he was right. It was already miraculous that she hadn't torn my cabin apart searching for her baby. But somehow she hadn't. She trusted me, which made me feel both honored and terrified. Another hour passed, then another. The pup twitched more frequently now, adjusted his head, attempted to roll over. "Easy, buddy," I whispered. "Not yet. Just rest." He made a sound, then not a growl, not a whimper, something in between, like a toy slowly winding back to life. I cleaned his paw again. The bleeding had slowed, still red and inflamed, but no longer oozing. I could live with that. Outside, the wolf paced for the first time, 2 steps left, 2 steps right, then sat again, as if her body couldn't decide between patience and action. I understood that feeling all too well. I stoked the wood stove for additional warmth. The room quickly grew stuffy, but I didn't care. He needed heat more than I needed comfort. Night crept in slowly, shadows shifting across the floor. And the pup, he opened one eye, just one. I swear to everything holy, he looked straight into mine. Not with wildness, not with domestication, just with presence, with being. "You're not alone anymore, little guy," I whispered. "Not anymore." He blinked once, then drifted back to sleep. That was the first moment I thought he might actually survive. Not a guarantee, not a promise, but a possibility. And that possibility meant more than anything else had all day. The next morning, I awoke on the floor with a stiff neck and throbbing headache. The pup was still breathing shallow, but steady. Something had changed. His eye was open again, but this time it didn't drift closed. It focused on me with startling clarity. He moved not much, just a weak shift of his front paw, as if trying to scratch an itch, but it was his first deliberate movement. My heart nearly burst with hope. I grabbed my keys. "All right, buddy," I said, carefully wrapping him in a clean blanket. "Time to get you some professional help." I placed him in a plastic storage bin lined with soft towels, then set it on the passenger seat of my truck. The mother wolf was still outside. She rose immediately when I emerged with the bin. "He's okay," I told her, keeping my voice low and steady. "I'll bring him back, I promise." I didn't expect her to understand my words, but perhaps she understood my intent. She didn't growl, didn't charge, just watched intently as I backed slowly down the driveway. Every nerve in my body screamed with tension. I had no desire to become that guy on the local news who stole a wolf pup and got torn apart by its mother. The drive to Sophia's clinic took nearly 40 minutes, but it felt like hours. I constantly checked on the pup. His breathing remained shallow. His paw occasionally twitched, but his eyes stayed half open, alert. I pulled up quickly, rushed inside, and called out, "Sophia, emergency situation here." She came around the corner in blue scrubs, coffee mug in hand, and nearly dropped it when she saw what I cradled in my arms. "No way," she whispered. "Where did you get a wolf pup?" "Long story. The mother brought him to me, literally dropped him on my doorstep like some kind of desperate delivery service." She motioned toward the back examination room. We rushed him onto a sterile table as 2 vet technicians joined us, wide-eyed with disbelief. "That's a wild wolf pup," one stated unnecessarily. "Like, seriously wild." "He's not aggressive," I replied. "He's barely alive. Please help him." Sophia began examining him, methodically checked vitals, inspected the wound on his leg, probed gently for other injuries. "Jesus," she muttered. "This wasn't an accident or a fall. This is a bite wound, deep one, upper jaw pressure. An adult male did this." "Another wolf?" I asked. "Almost certainly. Probably the alpha male. Sometimes they kill pups to force females back into breeding condition. Brutal stuff of nature." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just a sick pup. He'd been deliberately attacked, hunted, left for dead. And the mother, she must have fought off the attacker and brought her baby to me as a final, desperate gamble. "What are his chances?" I asked, dreading the answer. Sophia didn't respond immediately. "Slim, real slim. But he's a fighter and you got him here in time. We'll do everything we can." She looked at me intently. "You trust me to try?" I nodded. She trusted me. Now I'm trusting you. I stood by the observation window, watching them work, administering fluids, antibiotics, cleaning wounds. Sophia moved with practiced precision. The pup jerked once violently, then went completely still. Everyone in the room froze, but then came a breath, followed by another, shaky but definite. He wasn't surrendering yet, and neither were we. The sun hung low in the sky when I pulled back into my driveway. The forest surrounding my cabin had gone unnaturally quiet, too quiet. I killed the engine and sat there for a moment, hands still gripping the steering wheel. The plastic bin containing the pup rested on the passenger seat, lined with a fresh towel. He was breathing slowly but steadily, sedated with antibiotics and painkillers, but undeniably alive. I opened the door and stepped out, and that's when I saw her. She was already there, as if she'd never left. The moment gravel crunched beneath my boots, she stood up, her entire body tensed like a coiled spring, nose raised, breath coming in sharp, audible bursts. Somehow, she had heard my truck, perhaps even tracked it all the way from the clinic. She knew. "Easy," I said softly, palms extended in a futile gesture of peace. "He's here. I brought him back." I walked carefully around to the passenger side and gently lifted out the bin. Her head lowered slightly, but she remained rooted in place. "He's okay," I said. "Well, not okay, but better. Getting stronger." She emitted a deep grunt from her chest, not a warning. Something else entirely. It sounded remarkably like concern, like worry. I placed the bin down slowly in the middle of the driveway, then backed away, giving her space. She didn't approach immediately. She stared at the pup, then at me, then back at him. I waited in tense silence, and then she did something completely unexpected. She sat down, not 10 feet from her baby, and simply folded her massive frame to the ground, as if settling in for the night. I didn't dare breathe for what felt like an eternity. "Why aren't you taking him?" I whispered. "What are you waiting for?" No answer came, of course, just the gentle rustle of wind through pine needles and the occasional call of an early owl. The pup stirred slightly, let out a weak huff. Her ears instantly perked up. She leaned forward a few inches, then stopped, watching, always watching. I sat on my porch steps, both of us now engaged in some kind of silent vigil. Minutes passed, then an hour. Daylight faded into dusk, and still she remained motionless. I retrieved a flashlight, clicked it on, and checked the pup still breathing, still warm. I tucked the towel more securely around him. She shifted her weight slightly but made no move to approach. "You're not taking him tonight, are you?" I asked softly. "You want me to keep watching him, to continue what you started?" It sounded absurd even as I spoke the words, but somehow, I sensed I wasn't entirely wrong. She rested her head on her paws, and that's precisely where she remained throughout the entire night, just beyond the reach of my porch light, waiting, trusting a complete stranger to nurse her child back to health until she could reclaim him. In that moment, I understood she wasn't going anywhere. This was just the beginning. By the third day, the pup was moving around more. Not gracefully, he wobbled like he'd gotten into my whiskey supply, but he was mobile. He ate eagerly from a bowl I'd filled with the mixture Sophia recommended. Goat's milk-soaked puppy kibble and mashed berries. Messy as hell, but he devoured it hungrily. Outside, she maintained her vigil. Every morning I'd open the door, and there she'd be, sometimes curled beside the bottom step, sometimes pacing near the tree line, but always close, always observant. I maintained a respectful distance, left food and water for her a little ways off, though she never touched it. She wasn't interested in my assistance, just in him. On the 5th day, I received my first visitor. Ethan, my nearest neighbor, pulled up in his mud-caked pickup truck and stepped out, face unusually pale. "You seen that wolf?" he asked without preamble. "Yeah," I replied simply. "She's mine." He blinked in confusion. "What the hell does that mean, Jackson?" I explained the situation, or part of it, anyway. Told him she'd delivered an injured pup that I was attempting to rehabilitate. His expression transformed from confused to horrified to furious in the span of seconds. "You've got a wild wolf camped out by your house, and you didn't call anyone?" he demanded. "Are you completely out of your mind?" "She hasn't harmed anyone," I defended. "She just wants her baby to live." This ain't some Disney movie, man. People around here have children. What if she snaps? She hasn't ventured off my property once, I said firmly. Ethan left angry. I recognized that look. He would call someone. That was inevitable. 2 hours later, a sheriff's cruiser rolled up my driveway. Deputy Rivera stepped out, thumb hooked casually in her belt. "So you're harboring illegal wildlife now, Jackson?" she asked dryly. "Not exactly," I replied, then told her everything. She listened attentively, arms crossed, expression unreadable. When I finished, she sighed heavily. "You're lucky no one's been hurt, but this situation is untenable." "She trusts me," I insisted. "That wolf came to me because she had no other options." "She's still a wild predator," Rivera reminded me. "If this goes sideways, it falls directly on you." I nodded firmly. "Then let it fall on me." She studied me for a long moment, then exhaled slowly. "I'll hold off the state wildlife agency for a bit, but you need to find a resolution to this situation. Fast." I thanked her as she drove away, then glanced over at the mother wolf. She was lying down, massive head resting on her paws, eyes never leaving the window where, inside, the pup was batting a tennis ball across the hardwood floor, clumsy but determined. His paw still bore a scar, but the swelling had subsided completely. He was growing stronger daily, but something else was happening too, something unexpected. He didn't flee when I entered the room, didn't flinch when I touched him. He watched me the same way he watched the forest outside, with curiosity, caution, but remarkable calm. And suddenly it hit me, he wasn't just her pup anymore. He existed between two worlds now, half wild, half domesticated. And that was a precarious line we couldn't walk forever. The knock on my door came early the next morning, too early for good news. I opened it to find Deputy Rivera again, arms folded tightly across her chest, jaw clenched. "They're sending a wildlife unit tomorrow at first light," she informed me. "State level. They'll tranquilize her and relocate her if you don't handle this yourself first." I felt the news like a physical blow to my stomach. "You said you'd hold them off." "I did, and now I'm out of options. My hands are tied." I looked past her to where the mother wolf still rested beneath the pine trees. She wasn't pacing anymore, just waiting, as always. Rivera softened her tone. "You can end this your way, or let them do it theirs." After she departed, I sat on the floor beside the pup, who was happily gnawing on the toe of one of my boots, safe, content, blissfully unaware of the impending crisis. "All right, kid," I murmured. "Time for you to go home, whether you like it or not." I packed him into the bin once more, towel, blanket, a container of the berry mixture he'd grown to love. He whined just once in protest. I drove slowly along forgotten back trails, over muddy hills, to a remote spot I knew well, deep forest where the trees grow so densely they swallow every sound. I climbed out, opened the bin. He didn't move initially, just blinked at the sudden change, then looked up at me questioningly, as if asking what new game we were playing. Then came the crunch of branches breaking. She appeared at the edge of the clearing, not far away, perhaps 30 feet, watching us from the shadows, her breath creating small clouds in the cool morning air. I stepped back. "He's yours now." She didn't approach immediately. The pup finally climbed out of the bin, awkward and slow. He stood uncertainly on all fours, sniffed the ground, then looked up. Their eyes met, and something passed between them, recognition, relief, perhaps even fear. Then he cried out a tiny sound, nothing like a howl, more like a gasp of realization. She moved then, approaching slowly, head lowered, body tense. I held my breath, prepared to run, but she didn't charge. She stopped beside him, nose pressed to his fur, inhaling his scent thoroughly. He leaned into her, and my vision blurred with unexpected tears. I turned to leave, but then something extraordinary happened. She looked directly at me, not as a predator assesses a threat, but as one parent might acknowledge another. She nudged the pup gently toward me, then back toward herself. He hesitated, confused by the mixed signals. She emitted a low, soft sound almost encouraging, and he walked back to me. I knelt down, and he pressed his small head against my chest. "What the hell are we doing here?" I whispered, bewildered. She didn't approach closer, didn't urge him again. Instead, she turned slowly and disappeared into the dense trees without making a sound. And he didn't follow her. That was the moment I realized she had made the choice I couldn't bring myself to make. She had gifted him back to me. It's been 2 months since that morning in the forest, since she walked away. I waited there like a fool for a long time, holding the pup while the wind whispered secrets through the trees. But she never returned, not that day, not the next, not once. I kept expecting to find her tracks outside my cabin, claw marks on trees, perhaps a freshly killed rabbit left nearby as some kind of offering. Nothing. She vanished completely, but the pup, he stayed. I provided him space, constructed a small enclosure outside, half fenced with logs and climbing structures. He hated the confinement, broke free within a week. Now he simply stays near my property, comes and goes as he pleases, sleeps beneath the porch on hot afternoons, wanders during daylight hours, comes running when he hears the distinctive rattle of the dog food container. He's not a pet, God knows. He's not truly tame, but he's not entirely wild either. He exists in that nebulous space between worlds. Sometimes I catch him staring toward the tree line for hours, nose twitching, ears attentive, waiting for her. I find myself doing the same thing every evening. I sit on the porch with a flashlight and a mug of bitter coffee, listening, hoping, wondering. Sometimes I hear rustling in the dark, heavy footfalls, a deep exhalation of breath, but nothing ever emerges from the shadows. Nothing reveals itself. I've stopped calling it paranoia now. I simply call it my routine. About 3 weeks ago, I discovered a freshly killed rabbit near the forest edge, a clean kill, untouched, no blood trail, no signs of scavengers. A gift. That same night, the pup wouldn't stop pacing, crying, whimpering in a way I hadn't heard since those first desperate days. She had been there, I know it with absolute certainty. She's checking in, watching from a distance, allowing him to stay with me but ensuring he doesn't forget his true nature. And perhaps that's the point of all this. He belongs to both worlds now. He sleeps beside my woodpile but chases squirrels with savage precision. He fights with Ethan's border collie but can climb a tree like a shadow when startled. He doesn't truly belong anywhere, yet somehow he fits perfectly here. As for me, I still leave the porch light burning through the night, still place fresh berries at the forest's edge, still watch the shadows. Not because I expect her to return permanently, but because she already left behind what mattered most, this messy, stubborn, bright-eyed piece of herself. He's enough, but I'll be honest, every time the wind changes direction, every time the night grows unusually quiet, every time he lifts his head and stares into the darkness as if he perceives something I can't, I get this feeling deep in my gut. Not fear, not hope exactly, just the profound certainty that this story isn't finished. Not yet.